What is going on, everyone? And welcome back to the Stokastic Best Ball YouTube channel. Matt Savoca here at Draftaholic. And I'm here with my buddy Nick Lepri. Follow him at Notorious FNTSY. And we are talking some best ball strategy once again here. And we are talking a specific draft strategy that has become wildly popular, especially as the NFL moves away from the bell cow running back and they get scarcer and scarcer every year. We're talking about Hero RB. Nick, how you doing today, man?
I am doing great today. I'm very excited to talk about this topic and how it relates to best ball. And I think, just like you said, a lot of people are starting to really key in on this strategy. I think right now, based upon if you were just entering a draft saying, you know what, Nick, you have to do a draft strategy, I think this is the one that I probably use the most.
Well, I thought that was kind of true for me, and it is true in seasonal fantasy football, but I was looking at my best ball allocation, and spoiler alert, I haven't used it as much as I thought I had. And I think I'm like 90% sure that scarcer is not a word, more and more scarce. I'm glad to start off by inventing some new words here. We all knew what I meant, but I still want to make sure that I got in so that the grammar police don't ultimately arrest me. More and more scarce is what I'm talking about. And yeah, and that's just the truth of the matter, Nick. The bell cow running back, the workhorse, the player that we can rely on for all three downs, all four quarters, is disappearing, and it has been continually disappearing throughout the NFL as positional specialists continue to take over and do their jobs very, very well. But what that means for fantasy football is that these bell cow running backs not only become more important, but they also get injured more often. And so taking our chance on one of them and then letting the rest of the field take their chances has become very, very popular, especially as we know there's 1 to 3 running backs who tend to separate themselves from the rest of the pack. If you hit that in a best ball tournament, that's how you get the big bucks, right? That's at least the start.
Yeah, exactly. You have to have one of those, and most of the time, unless of course you go zero running back, you go crazy on the wide receivers. Most of the time, you have to have one of those top 5 running backs, top 3 running backs, in order to keep advancing and eventually potentially win the tournament.
Right. And obviously, players matter when it comes to these tournaments year after year. We can look at all the positional allocation strategies, look at all the stacking strategies we want, and we're going to give that to you here on the Stokastic Best Ball channel. But ultimately, to win these big tournaments, we're going to have multiple hits in multiple places, but it absolutely starts with a bell cow running back. So why don't you go ahead and define what the hero running back strategy means to you? And let's use like the Best Ball Mania 3 tournament as an example. So we're not going to talk about Superflex just because it's more niche than just the general half PPR or full PPR strategy we see throughout the fantasy industry.
Yeah, so for me, hero running back, for some people, I think they will say it has to be a round number 1 running back. I think hero running back basically means in the first 2 rounds, you have to get one running back, and that is going to be your hero running back. That is going to be the guy that you have just one running back of, and then you're just going to start sprinkling everywhere else. You're going to go heavy wide receiver. You might want to go ahead and snag one of those upper echelon tight ends or one of those top 5 tight ends, depending on how you see things. And then you hop on the quarterback train as well. So basically, for the first 7, 8 rounds, you only really have one running back, and that's why it's called the hero running back, because he is the hero of the running back position, right? And then you're just going to be filling in, sprinkling, throwing fucking darts at the screen, hoping that one of those other running backs that you draft end up paying off. And in a best ball format where you don't even have to determine which running back it is every single week, to me, it makes things a lot easier.
Absolutely. Well defined there. For me, it's one running back in the top 24 picks. That is the only running back that you take in the top 24. And then typically, based on general positional allocation, Superflex notwithstanding, it's not another running back until the 75th pick. You might push that back if you're talking about a Superflex or 2 quarterback league.
Yeah.
And I kind of mentioned it up at the top here, Nick. I went through my underdog drafts this year and even some of last year, and I was surprised. With money on the line, I actually tend to go for that running back too, even more than I intentionally realized. If I'm keeping my boundaries for the hero RB strategy, I'm not actually executing it as much as I am in my head. And that might actually be a blind spot for me, somewhere I need to improve as we go forward. I think as you were looking through your draft history, you found one that really, really helps define this for people. So instead of just spending an hour getting into a draft right now on Underdog Fantasy, as fun as that would be, honestly, Nick, we did it once this week. We went into our history instead, and we're gonna show you that in just a moment. But I should mention that Underdog is our sponsor for this video and so many others here on the Stokastic Best Ball channel. They are truly the best place to play best ball. The app is so intuitive. It's nice. It's got a dark mode. They got multiple sports now, but the NFL tournaments have just been absolutely tremendous this whole off season. The Best Ball Mania 3 tournament up top, 10 million in total prizes, 3 different chances to take home $1 million, including that one person who's going to be sitting there in the playoffs having already won $1 million because they're the regular season champion. This Superflex Puppy tournament with just $5 entry fee, 50K up top, and of course 2 quarterbacks available for you to start. People have been, pun intended, hounding for this tournament, and it is already full very quickly. By the time you see it, it might already be full. They've also got rookies and sophomores. And when you sign up right now, use promo code AWESEMO, and you can get up to a $100 first match deposit bonus. This is free money. Free money is hard to come by in the betting, DFS, and best ball world. So absolutely take advantage of every single chance you get. That's why you got to use the promo code AWESEMO. We still use AWESEMO here and there, just an administrative thing as we turn things over to the Stokastic chapter of this channel and our site. We've also got a brand new best ball page available and a best ball package that we want to talk about. It's a great way to get both the fantasy football and best ball deals you need. We've got rankings for the Superflex tournaments. We got expert consensus rankings. We've got projections powered by the data and tools team, still led by Alex Awesemo Baker. And there's a weekly version. So if you want to add it to your usual fantasy football package that you've had for 25 something years, this is a perfect chance to add our projections, add our data into your process just for $9.99 a week. And we're going to have promo codes throughout the off season as well. All right. Thanks for hearing my spiel, guys. Let's go into this draft where I think you perfectly executed this hero RB strategy.
Alrighty, so as we pulled the draft up here, I think me and Savoca kind of talked about this prior to us recording this video. We probably should talk about the team first and then show you guys the draft. So as you can see on the screen here, the first running back, my hero running back, my workhorse running back, whatever the fuck you want to call this strategy, is Najee Harris. I selected him at pick number 8. Now, I will tell you guys right now, this draft was done about 3 weeks ago prior to the Rob Gronkowski retiring news. I did draft Rob Gronkowski. You shouldn't draft Rob Gronkowski right now where I drafted him in this draft, but maybe he'll come back. But I digress.
No, that's a good point of clarification. Absolutely.
Yeah, so Najee Harris was my robust running back. Not robust running back, I should say. Jeez, that's the completely opposite of this. This is the low T strategy. That's the high T strategy. So we got the hero running back here, Najee Harris. And then my second running back selected, as you can see, was Clyde Edwards-Helaire at pick 80. Then I went with Alexander Mattison at pick 128. Gus Bus Edwards at pick 161, Raheem Mostert at pick 185, and then with my final pick, I believe, in the draft at 209, I took James White thinking, you know what? While his upside isn't crazy, he can fill in the lineup a couple of times, scoring 8-9 points. Things could be a lot worse than James White, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And before we even talk about the wide receivers you chose, because obviously you're playing the draft board, we're going to show you guys in a minute what the draft board looks like. You don't know necessarily that you're 100% going with this hero RB strategy as the draft is unfolding. But we should talk about some strategy you obviously implemented here with the types of running backs that you ended up taking. Now, I noticed that your second running back pick, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, isn't until pick 80. So some really stellar things I can already see. You pick him at around ADP, but slightly after his ADP. So you get him at an actual value. And both Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Alexander Mattison, and Gus Edwards play on teams where you know they are going to utilize the running game in a very specific way. Minnesota is going to be changing over. I think it might be more valuable. But Madison, He's a little bit more of a handcuff, but an extremely valuable one. And Gus Edwards and Clyde Edwards-Helaire especially have standalone value right away from week one to help that running back 2 spot get at least 9-10 points, to help you get over the top. Same with James White. The same exact logic applies there, and you'll see Mac Jones dumping it off plenty. Raheem Mostert, Alexander Madison, and really CEH give you that home run upside in the RB2 slot, and then we're just relying on the bell cow in Najee Harris. Great job there. Why don't we show the draft board so we show why you ended up picking these wide receivers at this point? Look at this. Yeah, so you're going from the 8 spot, and look at the 7 spot and what they're implementing next to you there. So this is a great time to implement that strategy. What were you thinking as the draft board was unfolding, especially rounds 2 and 3?
Yeah, so when I was doing this draft, I don't go into any draft, and we've made this pretty clear. I say this in every single strategy video on the fantasy channel and on here. You don't want to go into the draft just thinking, you know what? I'm going to do robust running back. I'm going to do 0 wide receiver. I'm going to do hero running back. I think you should just go into the draft with an open mind and see how things work. So the first couple of picks, I'm seeing some running backs, some receivers. I'm like, you know what? I'll just go with my favorite running back available. Some people might say, Nick, you should have taken Dalvin Cook. You should have taken this guy. I take Najee Harris. I'm happy with Najee Harris. I understand that he's not the most efficient running back, but he gets so much volume that to me, it doesn't even matter. So I take Najee Harris. He's going to see a bunch of receptions. Boom. And then I'm swinging back in the second round. I'm like, you know what? I like DeAndre Swift. I like Alvin Kamara, but there's the suspension. You know what? Let me just take the best receiver available, a guy that seems to be a lock on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to be the #1 receiver. Godwin's kind of up in the air. Will he be healthy at the beginning of the season? Will it take a couple of weeks? Who knows? Mike Evans could be a top 5 receiver. I take him. Things swing back around. There's a lot of running backs going. Like you said, pick number 7. This guy is going full out running back. So I'm like, you know what? Let me just take the most high upside wide receiver available. I like Michael Pittman. I like Jalen Waddle. I like Hollywood Brown. But I'm thinking, you know what? Tampa plays in the same division as Carolina. Maybe I'll go for a Tampa stack. Let me get DJ Moore. Things swing back around. And then I start thinking about more wide receivers because at this point, once I get to pick 41, then I kind of open up you for the discussion here. I take Jerry Jeudy. I'm not in love with Zeke at this point. I do like Zeke. I think he's going to bounce back. But based upon the fact that I have Najee Harris, I'm kind of comfortable just waiting on more running backs. So then I just went with the high upside of Jerry Jeudy potentially being the #1 receiver on a Russell Wilson-led offense. To me, that sounded good in the 4th round. So what are you kind of thinking here about the draft so far?
This team 7, this is the highest T draft I've ever seen. At least there's some variance there. He's got some youth, some upside in DeAndre Swift, Javonte Williams, who look like premier talents, but the usage is a little bit of a concern. He follows that up with 2 players who I would be very, very surprised if usage is a concern. It's only injuries that are a concern for Ezekiel Elliott and David Montgomery. Really same thing with his 1st round pick, but remember, you can only start 3 of these guys any single week. So he really is kind of shooting himself in the foot from a wide receiver, tight end, and quarterback standpoint. But that's the highest T draft I've really come along. You expose yourself to you in your draft. You get multiple top offenses. That Denver KC game in week 17, obviously one that I'm looking forward to and getting a lot of players from. Mike Evans, you've been firmly on the Mike Evans in round 2 train all offseason long, really format agnostic for you because you believe that Godwin may truly sit for a few games, and that's enough to put Mike Evans clearly in the driver's seat in an elite offense. So then you just go with talent. DJ Moore and Darnell Mooney are young. They've already shown breakout potential. Maybe this is the year they ascend 3 rounds in ADP, and next year we're taking them at the end of the 1st, beginning of the 2nd because of their breakout season.
Yeah. And then after this is where a lot of people kind of get the strategy wrong. Now, you can obviously change the strategy, right? But if you're going strictly based off of what hero running back is, people enter the 6th round and they panic. They're like, oh shit, I have 1 running back. I have a million wide receivers.
It's me.
I now need to draft
I'm
a
the
running
panicker. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and then they take Antonio Gibson or someone like that who I'm not as in love with. So again, this is more of a thought process for best ball. We're talking about best ball. So I'm fine taking Tom Brady in the 6th round. of a best ball draft. In a
Hmm.
normal fantasy football redraft league, there's no reason to do that because Tom Brady might be available 3 rounds later. But in terms of best ball, where I'm looking to stack, I already got Evans. Boom, I hop on Tom Brady here, and I'm fine with it because a running back comes back around here that, in my opinion, maybe I'm sipping the Kool-Aid. I haven't been the biggest fan of Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first 2 rounds for the last 2 years. I've been clearly fading away from him. If you guys watch my content, I fucking hated Clyde Edwards-Helaire for the last couple of years. But this year, he's going in the 7th round, the 8th round. I'll do it there. I'm willing to take him there because I feel like he's the #1 running back in one of the best offenses in the league, even without Tyreek Hill.
Easy. Easy for me. Absolutely. Especially at pick 80, going after players like Hunter Renfrow, DeAndre Hopkins, who are good. Elijah Mitchell, who I'm pretty sure he's a product of his offense. We'll see what the talent level is. But I think you found yourself a nice little sweet spot where everybody else is looking quarterback, tight end, wide receiver. And now you just get your pick of this mid tier, which I think is going to be very, very fruitful. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, A.J. Dillon, Miles Sanders, Kareem Hunt, Tony Pollard, all talented players with RB1 ups. They need one thing to go right for RB1 upside. The thing I really like about CEH more than those players in particular is that who's getting that first carry on the first drive for the Kansas City Chiefs in that first game? No doubt about it. It's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You've got two starting running backs. Yes, I know the passing offense is elite there, and there's going to be plenty of passing touchdowns that technically eat away at CEH's upside, but that's the offense you want to tie yourself to. Great job here, man.
Yeah. So then after Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I'm like, you know what? Maybe I can get the Green Bay stack. Now, again, if this is a redraft league, if you draft Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, you're an idiot, in my opinion, right? Don't do that. Just draft one of them, stay away. But this is a best ball draft. So I'm thinking, you know what? Let me get Lazard. I don't know who the #1 wide receiver is going to be in Green Bay, but what I do know is one of them will be the #1 wide receiver and will probably heavily pay off at their ADP. So I bite the bullet. I take Allen Lazard, and then I take Aaron Rodgers. Now, right here, looking back, if I could hop back in the time machine, I probably would have not drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire, drafted potentially another wide receiver here with upside or a tight end, and then drafted Devin Singletary, who I like in a pretty similar range to Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
I don't know. I see hindsight's 2020, right? But this little skinny stack, you didn't know Gronkowski was retiring. All you can do is make the best decision with the information you have available at the time. Alan Lazard is a bit, Gajeski's a big fan of him going into this season. I'm more on the Christian Watson train. And then you don't pivot away or pivot back to the running back position until you really feel like you have to. Alexander Madison at pick 128. Let's scroll all the way down the draft board. Now we're past the point of implementing a specific strategy, right? You're just getting your players a little bit, making sure that you got all your bases covered from a positional allocation strategy. You add up with that Green Bay stack, getting Robert Tonyan, who should be back from injury, Jahan Dotson, who's apparently catching everything for the Washington Commanders. And then, as we said, these running backs with a potential to get 7 to 10 points pretty much every single week. And if one thing happens on their roster, suddenly they're talking about 20 total opportunities. That's the bell cow threshold, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Some nice speed and upside, too, albeit injury proneness in KJ Hamler and Paris Campbell. I actually love those picks in the later rounds.
Yeah, and something interesting also to talk about the strategy as a whole is that, like you said off the rip of the video, there are really only, 4 or 5 running backs that you consider true workhorses in the NFL. Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, Dalvin Cook, Najee Harris.
Derrick
Right?
Henry.
Derrick Henry. Yeah,
Yeah.
I missed Derrick Henry. That's fucking obvious. But yeah, right? There's only a couple of guys. I mean, Austin Eckler is a fantasy workhorse, but he's not a real workhorse running back because he only sees 12, 13 rushes a game. So I think that with this strategy, you almost have to bite most of the time in the first round, unless you're comfortable with a guy like DeAndre Swift being your running back that you just anchor your team to.
Yeah, and I want to remind people that while we don't have to go into the correlation games, I bet a lot of us already understand that, but touches from year 1 to year n+1 don't correlate 100%.
Yeah.
We got to remember that. It is a great way, looking at opportunity from previous seasons, is a great way to try to guess opportunity for the next season. But we also know that certain players with certain draft capital and athletic ability profile as players who could eventually get the workload that they need to become a bell cow. What we're saying about 20 opportunities per game.
Yeah.
Personally, I think people who fit that category this year, DeAndre Swift, Javonte Williams, especially because of the quarterback upgrade and his missed tackle rate across the board, looking really good. DeAndre Swift, I know, has good advanced metrics on playerprofiler.com, but Gajeski was pointing out that PFF did not chart him very well. And, there is a bit of human element to this, but
Yeah.
I'd rather just have a player in Javonte Williams who looks good in pretty much every advanced metric. Ultimately, we only get a few players each year who stick up for the whole entire year at that 20 opportunity per game rate. And so I think getting Najee Harris, making sure you have one of them, and then taking your shots at different players who have eventual opportunity to get there is the exact way to play this.
Yeah, exactly. And I think some people will disagree with the pick on Alexander Madison because they think, oh, you need an injury for this to work. But if Alexander Madison becomes the lead back because Dalvin Cook misses half of the season, then this team is skyrocketed into superstardom because Najee Harris and Alexander Madison are both, in my opinion, top 10 backs if Cook is injured.
And high-profile handcuffs have very different value in best ball drafts where no one is available to make waiver wire moves than they do in a traditional fantasy league, guys, because every single week you have Alexander Madison. Let's say you went up and picked him a round or two early. Every single week where you're starting and sitting players making moves on the waiver wire, you can't drop Alexander Madison. If Dalvin Cook is healthy, you can't play Alexander Madison. So he's kind of burning this roster spot for you. It's not necessarily a great position to be in. However, in best ball, when we know the value of the role for him, if Dalvin Cook were to go down, it's actually very defined for us.
Yeah.
We can kind of quantify that upside. So those kinds of players, the Kareem Hunts, the Darrell Hendersons, the players who are in great offenses that would see great opportunity if one thing were to happen ahead of them on the depth chart, that's the exact kind of chances we want to take, especially when we implement this strategy. Nick, great conversation today. Any last words about the strategy, about the draft overall? I think this was a great example and a great draft by you. I really love this sneaky backdoor Green Bay stack along with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the two NFC favorites along with the Super Bowl champion Rams.
Yeah, I think this is a great team overall. Obviously, this was drafted a couple of weeks prior to Gronk retiring. There's still a chance, in my opinion, Gronk comes back, but drafting the 10th round, obviously, now looks fucking stupid, right? Because he's probably not going to play half the season. But at the end of the day, what can you do, right? You're going to take those shots when you're in June drafting. So I'm fine with what I did. I think the decision itself was pretty correct, thinking that if Gronk plays, he's probably a top 5 tight end.
Yeah. And I wouldn't dwell too much on it. I think Robert Tonyan is going to give you baseline production at the tight end position. Yes, is there going to be some volatility there? Absolutely. Are you going to have weeks where you get like 3 to 4 points in the first 6 to 8 weeks before Gronk finally gets the money he needs to come back to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Yeah, it's going to happen. But guess what? You can make up for it with a 40-point game, with a rare 45 or 50-point game from one of these fantastic wide receivers that you were able to collect by not forcing the running back position. This has been a really exciting strategy conversation. We're going to be talking about all sorts of the main draft strategies to implement, how they differ from fantasy football leagues to best ball leagues. I think this is a very interesting conversation. I am Matt Savoca at Draftaholic. That is Nick Lepri at Notorious Fantasy. And before we get out of here, guys, make sure you leave a comment below about some of the picks you may not have liked. Don't give him too hard of a time for Gronk, or maybe you should. Maybe we should have seen it coming. But yeah, let us know what you liked. Let us know what you thought about this new format where we bring up a best ball draft. Love to hear from you guys, and we will always be helping you guys out moving forward throughout the offseason. For Nick, for me, we'll see you guys later.